Now that we have better control on our simulation, we can start looking at adding other elements to the mechanism that we're building. More specifically, we'll take a look now at how to add a camera to the machine that we're simulating. What that will enable us to do is that instead of looking at the vehicle drive away as we're running the simulation, we'll be able to attach a camera to a specific position on the body of the mechanism and have it follow along as it's being simulated. Now, where we'll add that camera is going to be from the camera section here of the toolbox. What we can do now is double click on perspective to add that camera to the mechanism that we're building. Now you'll see that the camera gets represented here as kind of a oldie style TV camera. We can then position where that's going to look at inside of the mechanism. Now before we move that camera around in 3D space, what we should do is attach the camera to the vehicle, because what we'll see here inside of its property sheet is that under the input section we have something called a local transform, which will be how is the camera positioned, and then we have the parent transform. Based on how the vehicle is oriented, attaching it to the vehicle might make the camera move or flip around, and you want to make sure that you do that before you actually try to position the camera respective to the vehicle. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that I actually hid the collision geometry here on the vehicle. So I did that as before by going into debug display and unchecking the geometry box so that I could more clearly see where is the camera relative to the body of my vehicle. So I'll come in here and choose the camera and look at adding it to the connection editor. So I'll drag and drop its parent transform section here, and you'll see that I now have a new box inside of the connection editor. On the other side, I want to pick up the position of the body of the forklift, and I'll do that by selecting the body part and then going under outputs and drag and dropping one of its output properties called world transform. That's going to be data in an XYZ and angles along the three axes format that I can use to go and control where the perspective camera should be positioned in the world. So now that I've created a link between these two elements, I can go back to the 3D view and see that my camera now actually points backwards. That's because based on the orientation that I had for the 3D model, it ends up being flipped here within the world. So we can see if I look at the property sheet for the perspective camera that it's going to have a minus 90 rotation here. So I'm going to change that to 90, and now we see that I'm back to pointing forward. I would also like to move the camera up. So as I select the camera, I can use these different buttons here that we have on the toolbar to go to a translation mode, a rotation mode, a scale mode, which would not be relevant here, or a measuring tool. So I'm going to go in and choose the translation element that we have here. And so I can see now that I can go and move that up to be able to go where the operator would be positioned. Now, if I want to get a live preview of where this might be, what I can do is right click and choose viewport configuration and choose to split my screen into two sections. Now, by default, these two sections might not be what I expect. One is perspective, the other one is a front view, but it does let me go in and go around and look at different points inside of the environment. To be able to see the actual view from the camera, I can right click on the right side section here, which is viewport 2, and click the C key on my keyboard. And so this will show me the view from my camera that's called perspective. We'll see that if I come back to the other side and start to move my camera back and forth, that's going to change the point of view that I'm going to see here in the right hand section. Once I'm satisfied with a position for my camera, I can go in and go back to a single viewpoint. And so now I could go and choose my camera viewpoint and be in the driver's seat. So I'm going to run the simulation here and start moving forward. Now, of course, I'm still going through that apron and that mast, but otherwise I'm in the environment, and we can see that I'm controlling this based on how I'm driving the actual forklift.